Welcome to a journey through the darkest corners of scientific knowledge, where the familiar becomes foreign and the impossible becomes merely unexplained. Tonight, as you settle into bed, prepare to explore mysteries that continue to baffle scientists and challenge our understanding of reality. These are not triumphant discoveries from textbooks, but rather enigmas that keep researchers awake at night. We will encounter signals from space that may carry alien messages, explore quantum mechanics where particles tunnel through solid barriers, and delve into the human mind where false memories feel more real than actual experiences. From cosmic dark matter to phantom limbs that ache after amputation, these mysteries span every field of science. As you listen, let them wash over you like gentle waves, each one reminding us that we remain surrounded by the unknown in a universe far stranger than our ancestors ever imagined. 1. The WOW signal. On August 15, 1977, astronomer Jerry Amon was reviewing data from the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University when he discovered something that would haunt scientists for decades. Among the cosmic static, a powerful radio signal had emerged from the constellation Sagittarius, lasting exactly 72 seconds. The signal was so extraordinary that Amon circled it on the printout and wrote "Wow" in red ink, giving this mystery its enduring name. What made this signal so remarkable was not just its intensity, which was 30 times stronger than background radiation, but its precise frequency of 1420 MHz. This frequency corresponds to the emission of neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, and scientists have long theorized that any intelligent civilization would use this universal frequency to communicate across the cosmos. The signal appeared to originate from a region of space devoid of any known stars or planets, making its source even more puzzling. Despite decades of searching and multiple attempts to detect the signal again, it has never repeated. The silence that followed has become almost as mysterious as the signal itself. To wonder whether we briefly intercepted a message from an alien civilization, witnessed a rare cosmic event, or encountered something else entirely beyond our current understanding of the universe. 2. The placebo effect. Imagine taking a sugar pill and feeling genuine relief from chronic pain, or receiving a saline injection and experiencing the side effects of chemotherapy. This is the profound reality of the placebo effect, a phenomenon that reveals the mysterious power of the human mind over the physical body. When patients believe they are receiving treatment, their bodies often respond as if they actually are, even when the treatment contains no active ingredients whatsoever. Brain scans reveal that placebos trigger the release of natural painkillers called endorphins and can actually alter neural pathways associated with pain perception. In some studies, placebo treatments have proven nearly as effective as real medications for conditions ranging from depression to Parkinson's disease. The effect becomes even stranger when we consider that it can work even when patients know they are taking a placebo, challenging our understanding of consciousness and belief. Some researchers have documented cases where patients receiving placebo chemotherapy lost their hair and experienced nausea, while others given fake knee surgery reported improved mobility and reduced pain. The placebo effect suggests that the boundary between mind and body is far more fluid than we once believed, raising disturbing questions about the nature of reality itself. If our beliefs can fundamentally alter our physical experience, what does this say about the objective nature of illness and healing? This mysterious mechanism continues to puzzle neuroscientists and philosophers alike, representing one of the most profound demonstrations of consciousness affecting physical reality. 3. Quantum entanglement. Albert Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance, but quantum entanglement represents one of the most verified and disturbing phenomena in modern physics. When two particles become entangled, they form a connection that transcends space and time, remaining mysteriously linked regardless of the distance separating them. If you measure the spin of one particle and find it rotating clockwise, its entangled partner will instantaneously begin spinning counterclockwise, even if it is located on the other side of the universe. This connection occurs faster than the speed of light, seemingly violating Einstein's theory of relativity, which states that nothing can travel faster than light. What makes this phenomenon truly unsettling is that it suggests our understanding of locality and reality itself may be fundamentally flawed. The particles do not send signals to each other, nor do they exist in determined states before measurement. Instead, they exist in a superposition of all possible states until the moment of observation, at which point the entire entangled system instantly assumes complementary properties. Recent experiments have demonstrated entanglement between particles separated by hundreds of miles, with the correlation remaining perfect regardless of distance. Scientists have even achieved entanglement between particles that never directly interacted, a phenomenon called entanglement swapping. This mysterious connection has practical applications in quantum computing and cryptography, but it also raises profound questions about the fundamental nature of reality and whether the universe is truly local and objective, or whether consciousness and observation play a more fundamental role in shaping physical reality than we ever imagined. 4. Dark matter. Surrounding us at this very moment is an invisible substance that makes up approximately 85% of all matter in the universe, yet it remains completely undetectable by conventional means. Dark matter does not emit, absorb, or reflect light, making it impossible to see directly. But its gravitational influence shapes the structure of galaxies and the evolution of the cosmos itself. Scientists first suspected its existence when they observed that galaxies rotate much faster than they should based on the visible matter they contain. According to our understanding of physics, these galaxies should fly apart, but something invisible is holding them together with its gravitational pull. Computer simulations of the universe's evolution cannot explain the formation of large-scale structures without incorporating vast amounts of dark matter. Despite decades of searching with increasingly sensitive detectors buried deep underground, scientists have never directly observed a single particle of dark matter. Some theories suggest it consists of weakly interacting massive particles called WIMPs, while others propose exotic alternatives like axions or sterile neutrinos. The most disturbing possibility is that dark matter represents a fundamental gap in our understanding of physics, requiring us to completely revise our theories of gravity and matter. Every second, billions of dark matter particles may be passing through your body without you feeling a thing, participating in cosmic processes we cannot fathom. This invisible scaffolding of the universe suggests that everything we can see and measure represents merely a small fraction of reality, leaving us to wonder what other hidden dimensions of existence surround us in the darkness. 5. The Fermi paradox. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi posed a question that continues to haunt scientists and philosophers. Where is everybody? Given the vast age and size of the universe, with its billions of galaxies containing trillions of potentially habitable planets, the absence of any confirmed contact with alien civilizations presents a deeply disturbing puzzle. The Drake equation suggests that even conservative estimates should yield thousands of detectable alien civilizations in our galaxy alone. Yet after decades of searching the skies with increasingly sophisticated technology, we have found nothing but silence. This absence becomes even more puzzling when we consider that it would take only a few million years for an advanced civilization to colonize an entire galaxy using self-replicating spacecraft, a blink of an eye in cosmic terms. Several explanations have been proposed, each more unsettling than the last. The Great Filter hypothesis suggests that there is some catastrophic event that prevents life from evolving into spacefaring civilizations, and we may not have passed it yet. Perhaps intelligence invariably leads to self-destruction through war, environmental collapse, or technological disaster. Another possibility is that advanced civilizations deliberately avoid contact, viewing us as we might view ants, or that they exist in forms so alien we cannot recognize them. The zoo hypothesis suggests we are being observed but kept isolated like specimens in a cosmic nature preserve. Most disturbing of all is the possibility that we are truly alone in the universe, the only conscious observers in a vast, cold cosmos, carrying the entire burden of meaning and purpose on our shoulders. 6. Spontaneous human combustion. Throughout history, investigators have encountered scenes that defy explanation. Human bodies reduced to ash with surgical precision, while surrounding furniture and even clothing remain largely untouched by flames. Spontaneous human combustion represents one of the most disturbing mysteries in forensic science, with over 200 documented cases where people appear to have burned from the inside out without any external ignition source. Victims are typically found as a pile of ash and bone fragments, with extremities like hands and feet sometimes left intact, as if the fire had a mind of its own. What makes these cases truly baffling is the intense heat required to cremate a human body, typically over 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, yet nearby objects made of highly flammable materials often show no signs of heat damage. The wick effect theory suggests that human fat can act like a candle, with clothing serving as the wick. But this fails to explain the localized nature of the burning or the extreme temperatures achieved. Some researchers have proposed that the phenomenon involves the ignition of methane or alcohol in the body, while others suggest unknown chemical processes or even ball lightning as potential causes. Witnesses have occasionally reported seeing blue flames dancing on victims' skin before the fatal combustion begins. The mystery deepens when we consider that some victims were found in positions suggesting they made no attempt to escape or call for help, as if they were unaware of their predicament until it was too late. These cases continue to puzzle forensic investigators and challenge our understanding of human physiology, leaving us to wonder whether there are destructive forces within our own bodies that we do not yet comprehend. 7. The hard problem of consciousness. Every moment of your existence, you experience something that science cannot fully explain: the subjective, first-person experience of being you. This phenomenon, known as consciousness, represents what philosopher David Chalmers called the hard problem, because it seems to resist all attempts at scientific explanation. While neuroscientists can map brain activity and identify neural correlates of awareness, they cannot explain why there is any subjective experience at all, or why we are not simply sophisticated biological machines processing information without any inner life. The mystery deepens when we consider the binding problem. How does the brain integrate millions of neural signals into a single, unified conscious experience? When you see a red rose, neurons fire in different regions to process color, shape, scent, and texture. Yet you perceive one coherent object rather than separate sensations. Some theories propose that consciousness emerges from complex information integration, while others suggest it requires quantum processes in microtubules within neurons. The most disturbing possibility is that consciousness cannot be reduced to physical processes at all, implying that there are fundamental aspects of reality that exist beyond the material world. Studies of patients with split brain conditions reveal that consciousness may not even be unified, with some evidence suggesting we harbor multiple streams of awareness that normally remain invisible to introspection. Anesthesia presents another puzzle. How does consciousness simply vanish and then return? And where does it go in the interim? These questions challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of self, reality, and what it means to exist as a conscious being in an apparently unconscious universe. 8. Ball lightning. Witnesses describe it as a glowing sphere of light that floats through the air with apparent intelligence, passing through walls, following people, and sometimes exploding with devastating force. Ball lightning remains one of the most elusive phenomena in atmospheric physics, reported thousands of times throughout history, yet rarely captured on film or properly studied. These mysterious orbs typically appear during thunderstorms ranging in size from a golf ball to several feet in diameter and can persist for minutes, while conventional lightning lasts mere milliseconds. The spheres exhibit behaviors that seem to defy known physics, moving against air currents, maintaining stable shapes despite having no apparent container, and sometimes demonstrating what appears to be purposeful movement. Some witnesses report that ball lightning has followed them down hallways, hovered near their faces, or even passed through closed windows without breaking the glass. The phenomenon has been blamed for starting unexplained fires, melting metal objects, and in rare cases, severely burning or killing people. Scientific explanations range from plasma formations to electromagnetic effects, but none adequately account for all observed behaviors. Recent laboratory experiments have created short-lived luminous spheres using various methods, but these artificial creations bear little resemblance to the stable, mobile orbs reported in nature. Some researchers theorize that ball lightning involves exotic states of matter or unknown electromagnetic phenomena that occur only under very specific atmospheric conditions. The mystery is compounded by the fact that ball lightning seems to interact with electronic devices in unpredictable ways, sometimes passing harmlessly through them, and other times causing significant damage, suggesting properties that remain completely outside our current understanding of electrical phenomena. 9. The bloop. In 1997, underwater microphones operated by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration detected a sound that would perplex marine scientists for over a decade. The bloop, as it came to be known, was an ultra-low frequency noise that rose rapidly in pitch over the course of about 1 minute, so powerful that it was detected by sensors over 3,000 miles apart in the Pacific Ocean. What made this sound truly mysterious was its origin point in one of the most remote areas of the ocean, far from any known shipping lanes, geological activity, or human presence. Analysis revealed that the sound profile was consistent with a biological source, but it would have required a creature far larger than any known animal to produce such volume. The blue whale, the largest animal on Earth, produces calls that are detectable over hundreds of miles, but the bloop was audible across thousands of miles of ocean. Marine biologists were forced to consider the disturbing possibility that something massive and unknown lurked in the deepest parts of our oceans. The sound was never heard again despite continuous monitoring, adding to the mystery of its origin and nature. Some theories suggested it could be the movement of massive ice sheets or unknown geological processes, but the biological signature remained puzzling. It was not until 2012 that scientists finally attributed the bloop to the sound of Antarctic ice sheets cracking and moving, but this explanation has not satisfied all researchers. The incident highlighted how little we know about the acoustic environment of our deep oceans, and raised questions about what other massive phenomena might be occurring in the unexplored depths beyond the reach of human observation and understanding. 10. Phantom limb syndrome. After amputation, up to 80% of patients experience sensations in limbs that no longer exist, feeling pain, itching, movement, and pressure in empty space where their arms or legs once were. Phantom limb syndrome represents one of neuroscience's most puzzling mysteries, demonstrating that our sense of physical self extends far beyond the boundaries of our actual body. Patients report incredibly vivid sensations, describing the exact position of their missing fingers, the feeling of a wedding ring on an absent hand, or intense pain in a foot that was removed years ago. What makes this phenomenon particularly disturbing is that the phantom sensations can be more intense and persistent than feelings in the remaining intact limbs. Some patients experience phantom limbs that feel stuck in uncomfortable positions, creating psychological torment as they cannot move or adjust limbs that do not exist. Mirror therapy, where patients watch reflections of their remaining limb to trick the brain into thinking the phantom limb is moving, sometimes provides relief, suggesting that visual input can override the phantom sensations. Brain imaging reveals that areas of the motor cortex formerly devoted to the missing limb become reorganized, with neighboring regions expanding into the vacant neural territory. This neural plasticity explains why some patients feel phantom sensations when other parts of their body are touched, as if the missing limb has been mapped onto existing anatomy. The syndrome raises profound questions about body ownership and the construction of self, suggesting that our sense of having a physical form is largely a creation of the nervous system rather than an accurate reflection of our actual anatomy. 11. The double slit experiment. This deceptively simple experiment has been called the central mystery of quantum mechanics, and for good reason. When scientists fire individual particles of light or matter through two parallel slits, the results challenge everything we think we know about reality. If you fire the particles one at a time through the slits without observing which slit each particle passes through, they create an interference pattern on a detection screen, as if each particle somehow travels through both slits simultaneously and interferes with itself. This suggests that unobserved particles exist in a superposition of all possible states, taking every available path through space. However, when scientists place detectors at the slits to determine which path each particle actually takes, the interference pattern disappears and the particles behave like ordinary objects, passing through one slit or the other. The mere act of observation seems to collapse the wave function and force particles to choose a definite path through space. Even more disturbing is the delayed choice variation, where the decision to observe is made after the particle has already passed through the slits, but before it hits the detection screen. Somehow, the particle seems to retroactively decide whether it traveled through one slit or both, based on a measurement that happens in its future. This experiment suggests that reality does not exist in a definite state, independent of observation, and that consciousness or measurement apparatus plays a fundamental role in determining the nature of physical phenomena. The implications are staggering. Either particles possess some form of backwards-in-time communication, or reality itself is far stranger and more observer-dependent than our everyday experience suggests. 12. Déjà vu. The French term means already seen, but the experience of déjà vu is far more complex and disturbing than simple recognition. This phenomenon occurs when you suddenly feel with absolute certainty that you have lived through the exact same moment before, complete with identical surroundings, conversations, and thoughts, even though you logically know this is impossible. The sensation is so vivid and compelling that it can create a momentary disorientation, as if time itself has glitched, or you have somehow stepped outside the normal flow of temporal experience. Déjà vu affects about 70% of the population, typically lasting only seconds but leaving a lingering sense of unease and mystery. Neurologists believe the phenomenon results from a slight delay in neural processing, where information reaches different parts of the brain at slightly different times, creating the illusion of a memory forming before the conscious experience occurs. However, this explanation fails to account for the profound sense of inevitability that accompanies déjà vu, the feeling that you not only experienced the moment before, but that you somehow know exactly what will happen next. Some theories suggest déjà vu involves interference between different memory systems in the brain, while others propose it results from dreams or unconscious experiences being suddenly recognized. The phenomenon is more common in young people and tends to decrease with age, possibly because younger brains are more neuroplastic and prone to unusual neural connections. What makes déjà vu particularly unsettling is its apparent meaninglessness combined with its overwhelming sense of significance, as if the universe is trying to communicate something important through a glitch in consciousness itself. 13. The Tunguska Event. On June 30, 1908, something exploded over the remote forests of Siberia with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs flattening an estimated 80 million trees across 830 square miles, yet leaving no crater and no definitive evidence of what caused the devastation. The Tunguska event remains one of the most powerful explosions in recorded human history, yet its origin continues to puzzle scientists over a century later. Witnesses reported seeing a brilliant fireball streak across the morning sky, followed by a flash of light so intense it was visible 400 miles away. The explosion was heard 600 miles from the impact site and registered on seismographs around the world. Strangely, the destruction pattern showed trees knocked down in a radial pattern pointing away from the explosion center. But at ground zero, trees remained standing though stripped of branches, creating an eerie forest of bare poles. For decades, the remote location prevented scientific investigation, and when researchers finally reached the area, they found no meteorite fragments or impact crater. The explosion occurred at an altitude of several miles, suggesting the object disintegrated completely before reaching the ground. Various theories have been proposed, from asteroids and comets to natural gas explosions and even antimatter, but none fully explain all the observed phenomena. Some researchers suggest a small black hole passed through Earth, while others propose exotic explanations involving plasma formations or electromagnetic anomalies. The lack of physical evidence combined with the massive scale of destruction creates a disturbing puzzle that challenges our understanding of cosmic impacts and natural disasters. 14. Sleep paralysis. Imagine awakening in the dead of night, fully conscious and aware of your surroundings, but completely unable to move or speak, while a malevolent presence looms over you in the darkness. Sleep paralysis traps victims in a terrifying liminal state between sleep and wakefulness, where the mind is alert, but the body remains locked in the muscular paralysis that normally prevents us from acting out our dreams. During these episodes, which can last from seconds to several minutes, people report sensing evil presences in their room, feeling pressure on their chest as if being crushed, and sometimes experiencing vivid hallucinations of shadowy figures, old women or demonic entities approaching their bed. The phenomenon occurs in all cultures throughout history, giving rise to folklore about night hags, demons, and alien abductions. From a neurological perspective, sleep paralysis happens when REM sleep intrudes into wakefulness, causing the temporary paralysis and dream imagery to persist while consciousness returns. However, this scientific explanation does little to diminish the profound terror experienced by victims, who often report that the hallucinations feel more real than ordinary waking perception. Some people experience sleep paralysis regularly, living in fear of bedtime and developing severe sleep anxiety. The consistency of the terrifying imagery across different cultures and time periods is particularly puzzling, suggesting either universal neural patterns or the possibility that sleep paralysis provides access to otherwise hidden dimensions of reality. Recent research has linked the phenomenon to sleep deprivation, stress, and certain sleep disorders, but the experience remains deeply disturbing for those who endure it, challenging our understanding of the boundaries between dream and reality. 15. The Mpemba effect. Common sense tells us that hot water should take longer to freeze than cold water, but a phenomenon named after Tanzanian student Erasto Mpemba challenges this basic assumption about physics. Under certain conditions, hot water can indeed freeze faster than cold water, creating a paradox that has puzzled scientists since Aristotle first documented it over 2,000 years ago. Mpemba rediscovered the effect in 1963 while making ice cream in school, noticing that hot milk froze faster than cold milk when placed in the freezer. When he reported this observation to his physics teacher, he was ridiculed for contradicting established science, but subsequent experiments have confirmed that the effect is real under specific circumstances. Various explanations have been proposed, including enhanced evaporation of hot water, reducing the volume that needs to freeze, convection currents that promote heat transfer, dissolved gases being driven out of hot water, and changes in chemical bonds at higher temperatures. However, none of these explanations fully account for all observed instances of the effect, and some studies have failed to reproduce it entirely. The phenomenon appears to depend on a complex interplay of factors including container shape, water purity, environmental conditions, and cooling methods. What makes the Mpemba effect particularly disturbing to physicists is that it suggests our understanding of basic thermodynamics may be incomplete. If something as simple as water freezing can produce unexpected results, what other fundamental assumptions about physics might be wrong? The effect highlights how even the most basic natural processes can harbor mysteries that challenge our scientific understanding of the world. 16. Crop circles. Imagine walking through a wheat field at dawn and discovering an intricate geometric pattern carved into the grain with mathematical precision that would challenge even skilled architects. Crop circles represent one of the most visually striking mysteries of our time, with thousands of formations appearing worldwide, primarily in England during summer months. These patterns range from simple circles to elaborate designs incorporating complex mathematical concepts like fractals, sacred geometry, and astronomical alignments that would require advanced knowledge to create. What makes genuine crop circles particularly puzzling is the way the plants are affected. Rather than being cut or broken, the stalks are bent at their nodes through a process that appears to involve intense heat, creating formations that can only be seen clearly from aerial perspectives. Laboratory analysis of affected plants reveals cellular changes consistent with brief exposure to microwave radiation, including enlarged cell wall pits and expulsion cavities that suggest rapid heating from within. The plants often continue growing after being bent, sometimes producing larger seeds and showing increased resistance to fungal infections. While many circles have been revealed as human hoaxes, particularly following the confession of Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, in 1991, researchers argue that the most complex formations appear overnight, in areas under surveillance, with no evidence of human presence or the equipment necessary to create such precise patterns. The mathematical sophistication of some circles includes references to advanced theorems, prime number sequences, and astronomical events that would require considerable expertise to incorporate. Some formations appear to respond to electromagnetic anomalies, with electronic equipment malfunctioning near certain circles and unusual readings recorded by various scientific instruments. 17. The Hutchison effect. In the 1980s, Canadian inventor John Hutchison claimed to have discovered a phenomenon that defied the fundamental laws of physics, producing effects so extraordinary that they seemed more like magic than science. Working in his cluttered laboratory filled with Tesla coils, Van de Graaff generators, and radio frequency equipment, Hutchison reported witnessing objects levitate, metals fuse at room temperature, and materials transmute into different substances entirely. Video footage appeared to show aluminum bars bending and twisting without applied force, pieces of metal becoming embedded in wood as if the solid materials had briefly become liquid, and objects floating in mid-air as if gravity had been temporarily suspended. The effect allegedly occurred when multiple electromagnetic fields of different frequencies intersected in complex patterns, creating what Hutchison described as localized distortions in the fabric of space-time itself. Mainstream scientists dismissed these claims as elaborate hoaxes or misinterpretations of conventional phenomena, pointing out that the effects could not be consistently reproduced and violated well-established physical principles. However, some researchers suggested that the Hutchison effect might represent an unknown interaction between electromagnetic fields and gravity, possibly related to theoretical concepts like zero-point energy or dimensional folding. Military and aerospace organizations reportedly investigated the claims, intrigued by the potential applications for propulsion and materials science. Critics noted that many of the demonstrations could be explained by hidden wires, electromagnetic induction, or clever staging, while supporters argued that dismissing the phenomenon without proper investigation represented scientific closed-mindedness. The mystery deepened when Hutchison's equipment was reportedly confiscated by Canadian authorities, and subsequent attempts to replicate the effects in other laboratories failed to produce consistent results. Whether the Hutchison effect represents a genuine breakthrough in physics or an elaborate deception remains one of the most controversial mysteries in modern science. 18. Synesthesia. Consider what it would be like if every time you heard music, you saw cascading colors dancing before your eyes, or if numbers appeared to you in specific colors that never changed throughout your lifetime. This is the reality for people with synesthesia, a neurological condition, where stimulation of one sensory pathway triggers automatic, involuntary experiences in another. Synesthetes might taste words, see sounds, or perceive personalities in numbers and letters, living in a world where the boundaries between senses dissolve into a rich, interconnected tapestry of perception. What makes synesthesia particularly fascinating to neuroscientists is its consistency and specificity. A person who sees the letter A as red will always see it as red, and this association remains stable throughout their entire life. Brain imaging reveals increased connectivity between regions that are normally separate, suggesting that synesthetes have additional neural pathways that allow information to flow between sensory areas in unusual ways. Some researchers believe we are all born with these connections, but they are pruned away during normal development, meaning synesthetes retain a more primitive form of neural wiring that gives them access to experiences the rest of us have lost. The condition appears to run in families and is more common in artists, writers, and musicians, leading to speculation that it might confer certain cognitive advantages. Some synesthetes report that their condition enhances memory, as they can remember information through multiple sensory channels simultaneously. Others describe it as overwhelming, particularly when exposed to loud sounds or bright lights that trigger intense visual experiences. The phenomenon challenges our understanding of how the brain constructs reality and raises questions about whether there is a single, objective way to experience the world or whether each person inhabits their own unique sensory universe. 19. The Taos hum. In the high desert town of Taos, New Mexico, approximately 2% of the population is tormented by a mysterious low-frequency sound that no one else can hear. Described as a persistent humming, droning, or buzzing noise similar to a distant diesel engine idling, the Taos hum has plagued sensitive individuals since at least the 1990s, driving some to desperation and others to relocate entirely. Those who hear the sound describe it as more felt than heard, a vibration that seems to penetrate their entire body and becomes more noticeable in quiet environments, particularly at night. The hum is typically heard indoors and often seems to emanate from a specific direction, usually described as coming from the north or northeast of the town. Extensive scientific investigations have failed to identify any acoustic source for the phenomenon. Teams of researchers have used sensitive acoustic equipment to measure sound levels throughout the area, but they have found no anomalous noise that correlates with the reports of affected individuals. The mystery deepens because the hum appears to be selective, affecting only a small percentage of the population while remaining completely inaudible to the majority. Sufferers report that earplugs do not block the sound, suggesting it might be perceived through bone conduction or even direct neural stimulation, rather than normal hearing mechanisms. Various theories have been proposed, ranging from electromagnetic radiation, from power lines or military installations, to geological processes deep underground. Some researchers suggest the phenomenon might be related to very low-frequency radio waves or microwave radiation that affects certain individuals with specific physiological sensitivities. The town of Taos is not unique in this regard, as similar mysterious hums have been reported in locations worldwide, including Bristol, England, and various locations in Australia and Canada, suggesting a global phenomenon with an unknown cause. 20 rogue waves. Until recently, sailors' tales of massive walls of water appearing suddenly from calm seas were dismissed as maritime folklore or exaggerated accounts of ordinary storms. However, modern satellite technology and wave monitoring systems have confirmed the existence of rogue waves, colossal water formations that reach heights of 100 feet or more and seem to violate our understanding of ocean physics. These monster waves appear without warning in otherwise moderate sea conditions, towering above the surrounding water like liquid skyscrapers before disappearing just as mysteriously as they formed. What makes rogue waves particularly terrifying is their unpredictability and the devastating force they can unleash upon ships. Unlike tsunami waves, which are caused by underwater earthquakes and maintain their energy across entire ocean basins, rogue waves form through poorly understood mechanisms that concentrate the energy of normal waves into a single, massive formation. Traditional wave theory suggested that such enormous waves should be statistically impossible, occurring perhaps once every 10,000 years, yet satellite observations reveal that rogue waves happen far more frequently than previously thought, with several occurring every day somewhere in the world's oceans. These discoveries have forced oceanographers to reconsider fundamental assumptions about wave behavior and ocean dynamics. Current theories propose that rogue waves form through constructive interference, where multiple wave trains combine their energy at a specific point and time, or through nonlinear wave interactions that allow smaller waves to merge and amplify each other. Some researchers suggest that ocean currents can focus wave energy like a lens, creating conditions where normal waves suddenly grow to monstrous proportions. The phenomenon demonstrates how little we truly understand about the complex systems that govern our planet's oceans, and it serves as a reminder that the sea still harbors forces that can appear without warning to challenge even our most advanced maritime technology. 21. The observer effect. At the quantum level, reality behaves in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of existence and the role of consciousness in the physical world. The observer effect demonstrates that the simple act of measurement fundamentally alters the behavior of subatomic particles, suggesting that objective reality may not exist independently of observation. When particles are not being measured, they exist in what physicists call a superposition, simultaneously occupying all possible states and locations until the moment a measurement device or conscious observer interacts with them. This quantum indeterminacy is not merely a limitation of our measuring instruments, but appears to be a fundamental feature of reality itself. The effect becomes even more mysterious when we consider what qualifies as an observer. Early quantum physicists debated whether consciousness was required to collapse the wave function, leading to philosophical interpretations that placed human awareness at the center of physical reality. However, modern physics suggests that any interaction capable of recording information can trigger the collapse, whether performed by a conscious being or an automated detector. This raises profound questions about the role of information in determining the structure of reality and whether the universe requires some form of measurement or recording to maintain its coherent existence. Experiments have shown that even the potential for measurement can affect quantum systems, as demonstrated by the quantum Zeno effect, where frequent observations can freeze a quantum system in its initial state. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that every possible measurement creates parallel realities, with consciousness navigating through an infinite multiverse of potential outcomes. These discoveries force us to confront the possibility that reality is far more observer-dependent than our everyday experience suggests, and that consciousness, information, and physical matter are interconnected in ways we are only beginning to understand. 22. False memory syndrome. Human memory, which we rely upon to define our personal history and sense of self, is far more malleable and unreliable than most people realize. False memory syndrome occurs when individuals develop vivid, detailed recollections of events that never actually happened, often believing these fabricated memories with complete conviction despite evidence to the contrary. These false memories can be indistinguishable from genuine recollections in terms of their emotional impact and apparent authenticity, creating profound psychological disturbance for those who experience them. Research in psychology laboratories has demonstrated how easily false memories can be implanted through suggestion, leading questions, or repeated exposure to fabricated information. In one famous study, researchers convinced participants that they had been lost in a shopping mall as children by simply having family members describe the fictional event in detail. Within weeks, many subjects had developed elaborate false memories of the experience, complete with emotional reactions and sensory details that felt completely real. The phenomenon becomes particularly disturbing when it occurs in therapeutic settings, where techniques like hypnosis or recovered memory therapy have inadvertently created false memories of childhood trauma or abuse. These cases have led to wrongful accusations, destroyed families, and profound suffering for all involved parties. Neuroscientists studying false memory have discovered that the brain processes fabricated and genuine memories in remarkably similar ways, storing them in the same neural networks and accessing them through identical mechanisms. This suggests that the human memory system evolved not for accuracy but for survival, prioritizing emotional significance and narrative coherence over factual precision. The existence of false memory syndrome raises unsettling questions about the reliability of eyewitness testimony, the nature of personal identity, and the extent to which our sense of self is built upon potentially fabricated recollections of our past experiences. 23. The Mandela Effect. Named after the widespread false memory that Nelson Mandela died in prison during the 1980s rather than living to become South Africa's president in 1994. The Mandela Effect describes the phenomenon where large groups of people share identical false memories about specific facts, events, or details. Unlike individual false memories, the Mandela Effect involves collective misremembering on a massive scale, with thousands of people independently reporting the same incorrect recollections with remarkable consistency. Popular examples include people remembering the Monopoly man having a monocle, which he never possessed, or recalling the children's book series as the Berenstain Bears, instead of the correct, the Berenstain Bears. These shared false memories often involve minor details that seem insignificant, yet are remembered with surprising clarity and conviction by those who experience them. What makes the Mandela Effect particularly unsettling is the confidence with which people maintain their incorrect memories, even when presented with evidence to the contrary. Many individuals report feeling genuinely disturbed upon learning that their vivid recollections do not match documented reality, as if they have somehow shifted into an alternate timeline where familiar details have been mysteriously altered. Psychologists explain the phenomenon through various mechanisms, including confabulation, where the brain fills in missing information with plausible but incorrect details, and social reinforcement, where repeated exposure to the same misinformation creates false consensus about fictitious facts. The internet age has amplified the Mandela Effect by allowing people with similar false memories to connect and validate each other as incorrect recollections, creating online communities devoted to documenting these collective memory failures. Some proponents of fringe theories suggest that the Mandela Effect might indicate parallel realities bleeding through into our timeline or evidence of time travel affecting the past. While mainstream science attributes the phenomenon to well-understood cognitive biases and memory formation processes, the Mandela Effect continues to disturb those who experience it, challenging their confidence in their own perceptions and memories. 24. Quantum tunneling. Imagine throwing a ball at a solid wall and watching it magically appear on the other side without breaking through or going over the barrier. This seemingly impossible scenario describes quantum tunneling, a phenomenon where particles pass through energy barriers that should be impenetrable according to classical physics. At the subatomic level, particles do not behave like tiny billiard balls with definite positions and velocities, but rather exist as probability waves that can extend beyond their apparent boundaries. When a quantum particle encounters a barrier, there is a calculable probability that it will tunnel through to the other side, even if it lacks sufficient energy to overcome the obstacle through conventional means. This effect is not merely theoretical but has practical applications in modern technology, including tunnel diodes, scanning tunneling microscopes, and the nuclear fusion processes that power the Sun. Without quantum tunneling, the nuclear reactions in stellar cores would be impossible because atomic nuclei lack enough kinetic energy to overcome their mutual electromagnetic repulsion through classical means alone. The phenomenon becomes even more mysterious when we consider that the particle does not actually travel through the barrier in any conventional sense. Instead, it appears to instantaneously materialize on the other side without existing in the intermediate space, as if it had briefly ceased to exist before reappearing in a new location. Recent experiments have suggested that quantum tunneling may occur faster than the speed of light, potentially violating Einstein's relativity theory, though this interpretation remains controversial among physicists. The effect demonstrates the profound difference between quantum reality and our macroscopic experience, where solid barriers are absolute and objects cannot pass through walls without breaking them. Quantum tunneling forces us to abandon classical notions of continuity and locality, suggesting that at the fundamental level, reality operates according to probability rather than certainty, and that the impossible becomes merely improbable. 25. The Mary Celeste phenomenon. The merchant ship. Mary Celeste was discovered drifting unmanned in the Atlantic Ocean on December 4, 1872, with its cargo intact, lifeboats missing, and no sign of the 10 people who should have been aboard. This maritime mystery has inspired countless theories and investigations, but the fate of Captain Benjamin Briggs, his family, and 7 crew members remains unknown to this day. What made the discovery particularly puzzling was the condition of the vessel itself. The ship was seaworthy and showed no signs of violence, piracy, or severe weather damage. Personal belongings remained untouched, valuable cargo was secure, and the ship's papers were missing along with the chronometer and sextant, suggesting a deliberate but orderly abandonment. The last log entry was dated 10 days earlier and indicated nothing unusual about the voyage. Various theories have been proposed to explain the disappearance, ranging from alcohol fumes, from the cargo creating an explosion risk, to waterspouts, seaquakes, or pirate attacks. But none adequately account for all the evidence. The Mary Celeste phenomenon extends beyond this single incident to encompass numerous similar cases throughout maritime history where ships are found abandoned without explanation. These ghost ships share common characteristics: missing lifeboats, absent crews, intact cargo, and no signs of struggle or catastrophic damage. The phenomenon challenges our understanding of human behavior in crisis situations and raises questions about what could cause experienced sailors to abandon a seaworthy vessel. Some researchers suggest that psychological factors like mass hysteria or collective delusions might explain these mysterious abandonments, while others propose that unknown ocean phenomena or atmospheric conditions could create situations where evacuation seems necessary to experienced mariners. The enduring mystery of these ghost ships reflects the vast unknowns that still exist in our relationship with the sea and the limitations of historical investigation when dealing with events that left no witnesses behind. 26. Prion diseases. Hidden within the proteins that make up our bodies lurks the potential for a type of infection unlike anything else in biology. Prions represent one of the most disturbing discoveries in modern medicine: infectious proteins that can corrupt healthy brain tissue without containing any genetic material whatsoever. These misfolded proteins act like biological templates, converting normal proteins into diseased versions that accumulate in the brain, creating spongy holes that eventually lead to death. What makes prion diseases particularly terrifying is their resistance to almost all forms of sterilization. Unlike viruses or bacteria, prions cannot be destroyed by heat, radiation, or chemical disinfectants that would eliminate other infectious agents. Surgical instruments used on infected patients have transmitted the disease to subsequent patients despite standard sterilization procedures, leading to tragic chains of infection that went undetected for years. Prion diseases can arise spontaneously through genetic mutations, be inherited through family lines, or be acquired through exposure to infected tissue. The most notorious example is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which can lie dormant for decades before symptoms appear, making it impossible to trace the original source of infection. The emergence of bovine spongiform encephalopathy, commonly known as mad cow disease, demonstrated that prions can cross species barriers, leading to new variant forms that affect humans who consume infected beef. The mechanism by which proteins alone can carry and transmit biological information challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of life and inheritance. Prions appear to propagate through a process of conformational conversion, where the abnormal protein structure acts as a template that forces normal proteins to adopt the same pathological fold. This discovery has revolutionized our understanding of neurodegenerative diseases and raised concerns about other protein misfolding disorders, like Alzheimer's disease, potentially having infectious components that remain undiscovered. 28. Chronic fatigue syndrome. Imagine waking up every morning feeling as though you have not slept for weeks, your body racked with exhaustion so profound that simple tasks like showering or preparing meals become monumentally challenging endeavors. This is the reality for millions of people suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome, a debilitating condition that remains one of medicine's most perplexing mysteries. Also known as myalgic encephalomyelitis, the syndrome involves far more than ordinary tiredness. Patients experience a constellation of symptoms including muscle pain, cognitive dysfunction often described as brain fog, severe fatigue that worsens after physical or mental exertion, and sleep disturbances that leave them feeling unrefreshed regardless of how many hours they rest. What makes chronic fatigue syndrome particularly frustrating for both patients and physicians is the absence of definitive diagnostic tests or clear biological markers. Blood tests, brain scans, and other standard medical examinations typically appear normal, leading some healthcare providers to dismiss the condition as psychological in nature. However, research has revealed measurable abnormalities in immune function, cellular energy production, and autonomic nervous system regulation in many patients. Some studies suggest that the syndrome might involve persistent viral infections, autoimmune dysfunction, or metabolic disruptions at the cellular level that interfere with the body's ability to produce and utilize energy efficiently. The condition often begins suddenly, sometimes following viral infections, severe stress, or traumatic events, but it can also develop gradually over months or years. Recent research has identified subsets of patients with different symptom patterns and potential underlying mechanisms, suggesting that chronic fatigue syndrome might actually represent multiple related disorders rather than a single disease entity. The mystery deepens when considering the variability in patient responses to treatments, with some individuals showing improvement through specific interventions, while others remain severely disabled despite trying numerous therapeutic approaches. 29. The Voynich Manuscript. Hidden away in Yale University's rare book library lies what many consider the most mysterious book in the world, a medieval manuscript written in an unknown language using an undeciphered script filled with bizarre illustrations of unidentifiable plants, astronomical charts, and naked figures in strange blue-green pools. The Voynich manuscript, named after the Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912, consists of approximately 240 pages of vellum covered with flowing text that resembles no known writing system. Carbon dating places its creation in the early 15th century, yet despite decades of analysis by professional cryptographers, linguists, and computer scientists, no one has successfully decoded its meaning or even determined whether it represents a genuine language or an elaborate hoax. The manuscript's illustrations are equally perplexing, depicting plants that do not correspond to any known botanical species, astronomical diagrams with unfamiliar symbols, and human figures engaged in mysterious activities involving interconnected systems of tubes and pools. The text follows statistical patterns consistent with natural languages, including appropriate distributions of character frequencies and word repetitions, suggesting it may represent a genuine attempt to record information rather than meaningless gibberish. Some researchers have proposed that the manuscript might be written in an artificial language created for philosophical or magical purposes, while others suggest it could represent a cipher system designed to conceal heretical or dangerous knowledge. The possibility that it documents lost medieval knowledge about medicine, astronomy, or alchemy continues to intrigue scholars, particularly given the sophisticated understanding of certain subjects displayed in the illustrations. Modern computer analysis has revealed subtle patterns in the text that might provide clues to its structure, but progress remains frustratingly slow. The manuscript stands as a testament to how much knowledge from the past remains inaccessible to us, locked away in symbols and systems of thought that may have died with their creators. 30. Morgellons disease. Patients describe the sensation of insects crawling beneath their skin, followed by the emergence of colorful fibers that seem to grow from open wounds, creating one of the most controversial and disturbing conditions in modern medicine. Morgellons disease affects thousands of people worldwide, yet the medical establishment remains divided on whether it represents a genuine physical condition or a form of psychological disorder called delusional parasitosis. Those who suffer from morgellons report intense itching and crawling sensations, skin lesions that heal slowly or not at all, and the appearance of unusual fibers in various colors, including red, blue, black, and clear, that emerge from their skin. These fibers often appear to be synthetic in nature when examined under microscopes, leading to speculation about environmental toxins, nanotechnology, or unknown infectious agents. Patients frequently collect samples of the fibers and skin debris in containers, desperately seeking medical professionals who will take their symptoms seriously and provide effective treatment. The condition often severely impacts quality of life, with many sufferers becoming socially isolated due to the visible nature of their skin lesions and the skepticism they encounter from healthcare providers. Some research has suggested connections between morgellons and Lyme disease, with certain patients testing positive for the bacterial infections that cause Lyme disease. Other studies have identified unusual bacteria, including genetically modified organisms, in fiber samples collected from patients, raising questions about possible environmental sources of the condition. The fibers themselves have been analyzed using various techniques, with some researchers claiming they contain cellulose and other materials not typically found in human tissue, while others argue that the fibers represent common textile contamination or misidentified biological materials. The controversy surrounding morgellons reflects broader tensions in medicine between patient experiences and scientific validation, highlighting how little we understand about the complex interactions between environmental factors, infectious agents, and human physiology. 31. The Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera discovered the remnants of an ancient shipwreck that would challenge everything historians thought they knew about ancient technology. Among the artifacts recovered was a corroded bronze mechanism so complex and sophisticated that it would not be out of place in a clockmaker's workshop from the 18th century, yet it was created over 2,000 years ago during the height of ancient Greek civilization. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, consists of at least 37 interlocking bronze gears arranged in a system so intricate that it could accurately predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets decades into the future. X-ray analysis has revealed inscriptions describing astronomical cycles and eclipse predictions with remarkable precision, suggesting that ancient Greek astronomers possessed far more sophisticated knowledge than previously believed. The device could calculate the timing of Olympic Games, predict lunar and solar eclipses, and track the complex motions of celestial bodies using mechanical computation principles that would not be rediscovered until the Renaissance. What makes this discovery particularly disturbing to historians is that it represents a level of technological achievement that seems to have vanished completely from the historical record. No similar devices have been found from antiquity, and no ancient texts describe the construction or operation of such mechanisms. The craftsmanship required to create the precisely cut gears and intricate mechanical linkages suggests an entire industry of skilled artisans and engineers whose knowledge was somehow lost to history. Some researchers speculate that the Antikythera mechanism represents just one example of a sophisticated ancient technology that has been almost entirely erased from human memory, leaving us to wonder what other remarkable achievements of the ancient world have been lost forever in the depths of time. 32. Savant syndrome. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons connected by trillions of synapses, yet in rare individuals, injury or developmental differences can unlock extraordinary abilities that seem to defy our understanding of intelligence and consciousness. Savant syndrome occurs when people with significant mental disabilities simultaneously possess remarkable talents in specific areas, often displaying abilities that surpass those of trained professionals in mathematics, music, art, or memory. These individuals might be unable to tie their shoes or carry on simple conversations, yet they can instantly calculate what day of the week any historical date fell on, reproduce complex musical compositions after hearing them once, or create detailed architectural drawings from memory. What makes savant syndrome particularly mysterious is that these abilities often emerge suddenly following brain injuries or appear without any formal training or practice. Kim Peek, the inspiration for the movie Rain Man, could read 2 pages of a book simultaneously using each eye independently and retained virtually everything he read throughout his entire life, yet he required assistance with basic daily activities. Brain imaging studies reveal that savants often show unusual neural connectivity patterns, with some regions of the brain developing extraordinary specialization, while others remain underdeveloped. The syndrome suggests that the human brain possesses latent capabilities that are normally suppressed or inaccessible through conscious effort. Some researchers propose that savant abilities represent ancient forms of cognition that predate language and abstract thinking, accessing more fundamental ways of processing information about the world. The existence of acquired savant syndrome, where normal individuals suddenly develop extraordinary abilities following head injuries or degenerative diseases, raises disturbing questions about the nature of human potential and whether we all possess hidden talents that remain locked away by the normal functioning of our brains. These cases challenge conventional notions of intelligence and suggest that consciousness and ability are far more complex and mysterious than we currently understand. 33. The Nazca Lines. Stretching across 200 square miles of Peru's arid plateau lies one of archaeology's most perplexing mysteries: enormous drawings etched into the desert floor that can only be fully appreciated from hundreds of feet in the air. The Nazca Lines consist of over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 animal and plant designs created by removing the dark surface stones to reveal lighter soil beneath. These geoglyphs include representations of spiders, monkeys, hummingbirds, and human figures, some extending over 1,200 feet in length and displaying such precise proportions that they appear to have been created using sophisticated surveying techniques. What makes these ancient artworks truly mysterious is their scale and the fact that they were created by a civilization that, according to conventional archaeology, had no means of flight to view their completed works. The Nazca culture flourished between 100 and 700 CE, long before the invention of hot air balloons or aircraft, yet they somehow managed to create perfectly proportioned designs that can only be properly seen from aerial perspectives. The lines themselves demonstrate remarkable preservation, remaining virtually unchanged for over 1,000 years due to the region's extremely dry climate and lack of strong winds. Some lines extend in perfectly straight paths for miles across varied terrain, requiring sophisticated understanding of geometry and surveying to maintain their precision. The purpose of these massive drawings remains hotly debated among researchers. Some theories suggest they served as astronomical calendars or ritual pathways, while others propose they were offerings to sky gods or markers for underground water sources. The most controversial explanations involve ancient astronaut theories, suggesting that the lines were created as landing strips or signals for extraterrestrial visitors. Recent discoveries using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar have revealed even more lines and figures, suggesting that the full extent of this ancient engineering project may be far larger than previously imagined. 34. Phantom DNA. Within every cell of your body lies a genetic mystery that challenges our fundamental understanding of evolution and biological complexity. Scientists once believed that the human genome would contain hundreds of thousands of genes to account for our sophisticated biology, but the Human Genome Project revealed that we possess only about 20,000 protein-coding genes, barely more than a simple roundworm. Even more puzzling is the discovery that approximately 98% of human DNA does not code for proteins at all, leading researchers to initially dismiss this vast genetic landscape as evolutionary junk left over from our ancestral past. However, recent research has revealed that this so-called junk DNA, now termed the dark genome, may be far more important than anyone suspected. Large portions of this non-coding DNA show signs of being under evolutionary pressure, suggesting they serve crucial but unknown functions. Some sequences appear to regulate gene expression in complex ways, while others may influence chromosome structure or cellular processes we do not yet understand. What makes phantom DNA particularly disturbing is the growing evidence that it might hold the key to understanding human consciousness, behavior, and susceptibility to disease. Studies have found that many genetic variations associated with psychiatric disorders, intelligence, and personality traits occur not in protein-coding genes, but in these mysterious non-coding regions. The ENCODE project revealed that up to 80% of the human genome shows some form of biochemical activity, suggesting that our understanding of genetic function is fundamentally incomplete. Some researchers propose that phantom DNA represents a sophisticated regulatory network that controls how genes are expressed in different tissues and developmental stages, while others suggest it might contain evolutionary memories or backup systems for critical biological functions. The existence of vast stretches of active but incomprehensible DNA in our own genomes serves as a humbling reminder of how much we still do not know about the biological basis of human existence. 35. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. On the night of February 2, 1959, 9 experienced hikers died under circumstances so bizarre and inexplicable that the case remains one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, was attempting to reach a mountain peak in the northern Urals when something caused them to cut their way out of their tent from the inside and flee into the freezing wilderness wearing minimal clothing. When rescue teams found their bodies weeks later, the scene defied all logical explanation. The tent had been slashed open from within, and footprints showed that the hikers had walked calmly away from their shelter without putting on proper winter clothing, despite temperatures of -25 degrees Fahrenheit. Some bodies showed signs of massive internal trauma without corresponding external injuries, as if they had been subjected to enormous pressure that somehow bypassed their skin and muscles. One victim's tongue was missing, and several had unusual tan-like coloring on their exposed skin. Perhaps most disturbing of all, some clothing and body parts showed traces of radioactive contamination that could not be explained by known sources in the area. The official Soviet investigation concluded that the deaths were caused by an unknown compelling force, a phrase so vague that it only deepened the mystery surrounding the incident. Various theories have been proposed over the decades, ranging from military weapons testing and avalanches to infrasound phenomena that could have induced panic and disorientation. Some researchers suggest that katabatic winds might have created acoustic effects that drove the hikers into a state of terror, while others proposed that the group encountered some form of classified military activity that resulted in their deaths. Recent investigations have focused on the possibility of a rare type of avalanche that could explain some of the injuries, but this theory fails to account for the radioactive contamination, the missing tongue, and the organized manner in which the group left their tent. The Dyatlov Pass incident continues to attract researchers and conspiracy theorists alike, representing a perfect storm of unexplained physical evidence, government secrecy, and human tragedy. 36. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity. In our modern world filled with wireless devices, cell phone towers, and electronic equipment, a growing number of people report experiencing debilitating symptoms they attribute to electromagnetic radiation exposure. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, also known as electromagnetic sensitivity, involves a range of non-specific symptoms, including headaches, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, skin tingling, and sleep disturbances that sufferers believe are triggered by proximity to electrical devices or radio frequency emissions. What makes this condition particularly controversial is the lack of scientific evidence supporting a direct causal relationship between electromagnetic fields at levels commonly encountered in daily life and the reported symptoms. Double-blind studies have repeatedly failed to demonstrate that people claiming electromagnetic sensitivity can actually detect the presence of electromagnetic fields, or that their symptoms are specifically triggered by such exposures. However, the suffering experienced by those who believe they have this condition is undeniably real, with some individuals becoming so severely affected that they relocate to remote areas with minimal electronic infrastructure or line their homes with metal shielding. The phenomenon highlights the complex relationship between environmental concerns, health anxiety, and genuine physiological responses that may have psychological rather than electromagnetic origins. Some researchers suggest that electromagnetic hypersensitivity might represent a form of modern anxiety disorder triggered by fears about technology rather than the technology itself. Others propose that certain individuals might be genuinely sensitive to electromagnetic fields due to genetic variations or prior exposures that alter their physiological responses. The nocebo effect, where negative expectations about a treatment or exposure create real symptoms, may play a significant role in the development and maintenance of electromagnetic sensitivity symptoms. Despite the lack of scientific support for the condition, several countries have officially recognized electromagnetic hypersensitivity as a disability, creating legal and medical frameworks for accommodating affected individuals. The mystery of electromagnetic hypersensitivity reflects broader questions about the relationship between mind and body, the role of belief in physical health, and how we adapt psychologically to rapidly changing technological environments. 37. The Kecksburg UFO. On December 9, 1965, a brilliant fireball streaked across the evening sky over 6 states and parts of Canada, witnessed by thousands of people who described it as a controlled descent rather than a typical meteor crash. The object appeared to change direction during its flight and came to rest in the woods near the small town of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, setting off a chain of events that would become one of the most compelling UFO cases in American history. Witnesses who reached the crash site before authorities arrived described finding an acorn-shaped object about the size of a small car, bronze or gold in color, and covered with hieroglyphic-like symbols around its base. Local residents reported that military personnel quickly cordoned off the area, removed the object on a flatbed truck, and warned witnesses not to discuss what they had seen. Official explanations for the incident have changed multiple times over the decades, with authorities initially claiming that nothing was found in the woods, then later suggesting that the object was debris from a Soviet satellite or meteor fragments. However, declassified documents and witness testimony paint a picture of a highly coordinated military response that seems disproportionate to the recovery of ordinary space debris. The incident occurred during the height of the Cold War, leading some researchers to speculate that the object might have been experimental Soviet technology or even a classified American aerospace project. Local fire department members who responded to initial reports described seeing an object that was clearly artificial and intact, contradicting official claims that only small fragments were recovered. The consistency of witness descriptions regarding the object's unusual shape, symbols, and the military response has kept the Kecksburg incident alive in UFO research circles for over half a century. Recent attempts to obtain government records through Freedom of Information Act requests have been largely unsuccessful, with many relevant documents remaining classified or reportedly destroyed. The case represents a perfect example of how official secrecy, whether justified by legitimate national security concerns or bureaucratic cover-ups, can fuel speculation and conspiracy theories that persist for decades. 38. Fatal familial insomnia. Hidden within the genetic code of certain families lies one of the most terrifying diseases known to medical science, a progressive brain disorder that gradually destroys the ability to sleep, eventually leading to death through complete insomnia. Fatal familial insomnia is caused by a mutation that produces misfolded prion proteins, which accumulate in the thalamus, the brain region responsible for regulating sleep and arousal. The disease typically begins in middle age with mild insomnia and anxiety, but it progresses relentlessly through 4 distinct stages that span months or years of increasingly severe symptoms. In the first stage, patients experience difficulty falling asleep and may develop phobias and panic attacks as their normal sleep architecture begins to deteriorate. The second stage brings complete insomnia, accompanied by hallucinations and excessive sweating as the body's temperature regulation systems fail. During the third stage, patients lose significant weight and become completely unable to sleep, existing in a state of exhausted delirium where the boundaries between waking and dreaming consciousness dissolve entirely. The final stage involves dementia and eventual death, as the brain's fundamental regulatory systems shut down one by one. What makes fatal familial insomnia particularly disturbing is that patients remain conscious and aware throughout most of the disease progression, trapped in their deteriorating bodies while their minds slowly fragment from chronic sleep deprivation. Unlike other forms of insomnia, this condition cannot be treated with sleeping pills or other medications, as the physical structures necessary for sleep have been destroyed by the misfolded proteins. The disease demonstrates the absolute necessity of sleep for human survival and reveals how quickly our mental and physical health can deteriorate without this fundamental biological process. Families affected by this genetic disorder live with the knowledge that they have a 50% chance of inheriting the mutation, creating psychological burdens that extend far beyond the immediate medical consequences. The existence of fatal familial insomnia serves as a stark reminder of how fragile the neural mechanisms underlying consciousness really are, and how dependent our survival is on biological processes we typically take for granted. 39. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley. In one of the most arid and desolate places on Earth, massive boulders weighing hundreds of pounds appear to move across the desert floor on their own, leaving perfectly straight trails behind them that stretch for hundreds of yards. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley have puzzled scientists for decades as the rocks seem to glide across the flat lake bed called the racetrack playa without any visible means of propulsion. These mysterious trails appear and disappear over time, with some rocks moving only once every few years, while others seem to dance across the desert in complex patterns that include sharp turns and parallel paths. The phenomenon occurs in complete silence and apparent solitude, as no human has ever witnessed the stones in motion despite decades of observation attempts. The mystery deepened when researchers realized that some of the heaviest stones had moved the greatest distances, defying conventional explanations based on wind or water flow. Early theories proposed everything from underground magnets to seismic activity, but none could account for the precise nature of the trails or the fact that neighboring stones of similar size often moved in completely different directions. For over 80 years, the sailing stones remained one of geology's most perplexing mysteries, inspiring countless research expeditions and wild speculation about the forces responsible for their movement. In 2014, scientists finally captured the phenomenon in action using GPS trackers and time-lapse photography, revealing a process so subtle and rare that it had escaped direct observation for nearly a century. The mystery was solved when researchers discovered that during rare winter rainstorms, a shallow lake forms on the playa, and on cold nights, thin sheets of ice form on the water's surface. When morning sun begins to melt these ice sheets, they break apart and are pushed by gentle winds, bulldozing the stones across the slippery, muddy surface beneath. However, this explanation, while scientifically satisfying, somehow diminishes the profound sense of mystery that these sailing stones represented, reminding us that nature's most enigmatic phenomena often have surprisingly mundane explanations. 40 Cotard's syndrome. Imagine looking in a mirror and seeing a corpse staring back at you, or believing with absolute certainty that your internal organs have rotted away and your blood has stopped flowing through your veins. This is the terrifying reality for people suffering from Cotard's syndrome, also known as walking corpse syndrome, a rare psychiatric condition where patients become convinced that they are dead, do not exist, or have lost essential body parts or bodily functions. Named after French neurologist Jules Cotard, who first described it in 1880, this syndrome represents one of the most disturbing alterations of self-perception known to psychology. Patients may believe they are immortal zombies doomed to wander the earth forever, or conversely, that they are already dead and their continued existence is merely an illusion. Some sufferers refuse to eat because they believe they no longer have stomachs or digestive systems, while others may deny the existence of family members or claim that their loved ones have been replaced by imposters. The condition often develops following severe depression, schizophrenia, or brain injuries affecting areas involved in facial recognition and emotional processing. Neuroimaging studies have revealed abnormalities in brain regions responsible for integrating sensory information with emotional responses, particularly areas that help us recognize ourselves and feel a sense of ownership over our bodies. The syndrome appears to result from a disconnection between the parts of the brain that process self-recognition and those that generate emotional responses to familiar faces and situations. This creates a profound sense of unreality and detachment that patients interpret as evidence of their own death or non-existence. Treatment typically involves antipsychotic medications and antidepressants, but recovery can be slow and incomplete, with some patients retaining partial delusions even after improvement. Cotard's syndrome reveals how fragile our sense of self and bodily existence really is, demonstrating that consciousness of being alive depends on complex neural networks that can be disrupted by illness or injury, leaving individuals trapped in a nightmarish state between life and death. 41 The Oakville Blobs. On August 7, 1994, residents of Oakville, Washington, awoke to find their town covered in translucent gelatinous blobs that had fallen from the sky like rain during the night. These mysterious substances, ranging in size from rice grains to $half, blanketed the small community of 665 people and triggered a series of illness outbreaks that would puzzle investigators for years. The blobs were described as having a musty odor and a consistency similar to gelatin, and they reappeared during 5 more rainstorms over the following 3 weeks, always coinciding with reports of flu-like symptoms among residents who came into contact with the material. Local authorities initially suspected the substances might be related to military aircraft operations, as the area was located beneath flight paths used for training exercises. However, when samples were analyzed at the Washington State Department of Health laboratory, the results only deepened the mystery. The blobs were found to contain human white blood cells and bacteria typically found in the human digestive system, leading to speculation about biological warfare experiments or contaminated aircraft waste. More disturbing still, several laboratory technicians who handled the samples reportedly became ill with symptoms similar to those experienced by Oakville residents. The gelatinous material also contained an unusual bacteria species that could not be definitively identified using standard microbiological techniques available at the time. Various theories were proposed to explain the phenomenon, including the dispersal of jellyfish parts by military aircraft, evaporated and reconstituted sewage, or even exploded whale blubber carried by air currents from distant ocean bombing exercises. Despite extensive investigation by state health officials and independent researchers, no definitive explanation for the Oakville blobs was ever established. The incident represents one of the most documented cases of anomalous precipitation in modern times, with multiple witnesses, physical samples, and medical records supporting the reality of the phenomenon. The case continues to intrigue researchers studying unusual weather events and raises disturbing questions about unacknowledged military activities and their potential impact on civilian populations. 42. Mirror neuron. Deep within the human brain lies a network of cells that may hold the key to understanding empathy, language acquisition, and the very foundation of social behavior. Yet their discovery has opened up more questions than answers about the nature of consciousness and human connection. Mirror neurons were first identified in macaque monkeys by Italian researchers in the 1990s, when they noticed that certain brain cells fired not only when the monkeys performed specific actions, but also when they observed other monkeys or humans performing the same actions. These remarkable cells appear to create internal simulations of observed behaviors, allowing the brain to understand others' actions by activating the same neural circuits that would be used to perform those actions personally. In humans, mirror neuron systems are thought to be far more sophisticated, potentially underlying our ability to understand intentions, emotions, and even the thoughts of others through observation alone. When you watch someone reach for a cup of coffee, your mirror neurons fire as if you were reaching for the cup yourself, creating an unconscious physical empathy that may form the basis of all social understanding. Some researchers propose that mirror neurons are essential for language development, allowing children to learn speech by internally mimicking the mouth movements and vocalizations they observe in others. The autism spectrum has been linked to potential mirror neuron dysfunction, suggesting that difficulties with social interaction and communication might result from impaired neural mirroring systems. However, the mirror neuron theory remains controversial, with some scientists arguing that the evidence for their role in human behavior is largely circumstantial and that alternative explanations for empathy and social cognition should be considered. Studies using brain imaging techniques have identified mirror neuron-like activity in various regions of the human brain, but directly measuring individual mirror neurons in living humans remains technically impossible with current technology. The mystery of mirror neurons reflects broader questions about how consciousness emerges from neural activity, and whether our sense of being separate individuals is merely an illusion created by brains that are fundamentally interconnected through shared neural representations. 43. The Devil's Kettle Falls. Along the north shore of Lake Superior in Minnesota, the Brule River splits around a rocky outcrop, creating two waterfalls that demonstrate one of geology's most persistent mysteries. While the eastern falls continues downstream as expected, the western falls plunges into a deep pothole called the Devil's Kettle and simply vanishes, with no one able to determine where the water goes or how it eventually returns to the larger hydrological system. For decades, researchers have attempted to trace the path of the disappearing water using various methods including dropping colored dyes, ping-pong balls, and even GPS trackers into the pothole, but none of these objects have ever been recovered downstream or anywhere else in the surrounding area. The mystery becomes even more puzzling when considering the volume of water involved, as roughly half of the Brule River's flow disappears into the Devil's Kettle, representing thousands of gallons per minute that must be going somewhere according to the basic laws of physics and hydrology. Geological surveys have failed to identify any obvious underground channels or cave systems that could accommodate such a massive flow of water, and the bedrock in the area consists primarily of hard volcanic rock that should not be easily eroded into large caverns. Various theories have been proposed to explain the phenomenon, including underground rivers that connect to Lake Superior, deep fissures in the bedrock that channel water to distant springs, or complex cave systems that remain undiscovered despite extensive exploration efforts. Some researchers have suggested that the water might be flowing through narrow fractures in the rock that are too small to detect, but collectively capable of handling the entire flow. Hydrologists have noted that the Brule River downstream of the falls does not show the expected doubling of flow that would occur if the Devil's Kettle water rejoined the main channel, suggesting that the missing water might be emerging elsewhere entirely or infiltrating into groundwater systems. Recent studies using advanced geological techniques have begun to provide clues about the water's ultimate destination, but the Devil's Kettle continues to guard its secrets, serving as a reminder that even in our thoroughly mapped and measured world, natural mysteries persist in the most unexpected places. 44. Exploding head syndrome. In the moments between wakefulness and sleep, some people experience what can only be described as auditory terrorism, the sudden perception of extremely loud noises that seem to explode inside their heads with enough intensity to jolt them back to full consciousness. The phenomenon typically occurs just as people are falling asleep or waking up, during the transitional states of consciousness when the brain's normal sensory processing systems may be functioning abnormally. Episodes can be accompanied by flashes of light, feelings of electrical sensations throughout the body, or the sense that one's head is literally exploding, creating terror and confusion that can persist long after the episode ends. What makes exploding head syndrome particularly disturbing is the realistic nature of the perceived sounds, which are often described as being louder than anything the person has ever experienced in real life, yet they leave no physical evidence and cause no actual damage to hearing. The condition affects people of all ages but appears to be more common in women and older adults, and it can occur as isolated incidents or as recurring episodes that significantly disrupt sleep patterns. Despite its dramatic name and frightening symptoms, exploding head syndrome is generally considered harmless from a medical standpoint, though it can cause significant anxiety and sleep disruption for those who experience it regularly. The exact mechanism behind these phantom explosions remains unknown, but researchers believe they may result from minor seizures in the auditory cortex or delays in the normal shutdown of neurons during the transition to sleep. Some theories suggest that exploding head syndrome might be related to stress, irregular sleep schedules, or certain medications, but no definitive triggers have been identified. The syndrome represents one of many mysterious sleep-related phenomena that highlight how little we understand about the brain's behavior during altered states of consciousness. And it serves as a reminder that the boundary between sleep and wakefulness is far more complex than our everyday experience suggests. 45. The Bermuda Triangle. In a roughly triangular area of the western Atlantic Ocean, bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, lies what may be the world's most famous zone of mysterious disappearances, where ships and aircraft have allegedly vanished without trace in numbers that defy statistical explanation. The Bermuda Triangle legend gained prominence in the 1960s and 1970s through books and articles claiming that the area was responsible for an unusually high number of unexplained disappearances, often involving the complete loss of vessels and aircraft with no distress calls, wreckage, or survivors. The most famous case involves Flight 19, a squadron of 5 Navy torpedo bombers that disappeared during a training mission in 1945, followed by the rescue plane sent to find them, leading to wild speculation about everything from magnetic anomalies to alien abduction. Proponents of the Bermuda Triangle mystery cite cases where experienced pilots and ship captains reported compass malfunctions, electronic equipment failures, and time distortions while traversing the area, suggesting that unknown forces interfere with navigation and communication systems. However, skeptical researchers who have examined Coast Guard records and Lloyd's of London shipping data have found that the number of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle is not statistically higher than in any other heavily traveled area of ocean with similar weather patterns and traffic volume. Many of the alleged mystery cases have been found to have conventional explanations involving human error, mechanical failure, or severe weather conditions that were not properly reported in sensationalized accounts. The area is known for unpredictable weather patterns, including sudden storms, waterspouts, and the Gulf Stream, which can quickly carry away debris from accidents, making recovery of evidence difficult or impossible. Despite scientific debunking, the Bermuda Triangle remains a powerful cultural phenomenon that continues to attract believers and generate new theories involving everything from underwater alien bases to dimensional portals and lost Atlantean technology. The persistence of the legend demonstrates how compelling narratives about mysterious places can take on lives of their own, regardless of contradictory evidence, and how human psychology tends to seek supernatural explanations for events that have mundane but less satisfying natural causes. 46. Capgras syndrome. Imagine looking at your spouse of 20 years and feeling with absolute certainty that the person before you is an imposter, a perfect physical duplicate who has somehow replaced your loved one while you were not watching. This is the terrifying reality for people suffering from Capgras syndrome, a rare neurological condition where patients become convinced that family members, friends, or even pets have been replaced by identical-looking imposters. The syndrome typically affects the recognition of people who are emotionally significant to the patient, creating a profound sense of unease and paranoia that can destroy relationships and leave families devastated. What makes Capgras syndrome particularly disturbing is that patients retain the ability to recognize faces perfectly well from a cognitive standpoint, but they lose the emotional familiarity that normally accompanies recognition of loved ones. Brain imaging reveals that the syndrome involves a disconnection between the visual processing areas that identify faces and the limbic system that generates emotional responses to familiar people. When patients see their family members, their brains register the visual information correctly, but fail to produce the warm feeling of recognition that should accompany seeing someone they love. This creates a deeply unsettling experience where the person looks exactly right but feels completely wrong, leading to the logical conclusion that an imposter must be involved. The condition often develops following brain injuries, strokes, or neurodegenerative diseases that damage specific neural pathways connecting perception and emotion. Some patients extend their delusions beyond people to include places, objects, or even themselves, believing that their own reflection shows an imposter who has stolen their identity. Treatment typically involves antipsychotic medications and therapy, aimed at helping patients understand the neurological basis of their experiences, though the emotional impact on families can be profound and long-lasting. Capgras syndrome reveals how fragile the neural mechanisms underlying our most basic social bonds really are, demonstrating that love and recognition depend on precise connections between different brain regions that can be severed by injury or disease. 47. The hum around the world, from Bristol, England to Taos, New Mexico, a mysterious low-frequency sound torments a small percentage of the population, creating a global phenomenon that defies scientific explanation and drives some sufferers to desperation. The hum, as it has come to be known, is typically described as a persistent, droning noise similar to a distant diesel engine or electrical transformer, audible primarily indoors and more noticeable during quiet periods, particularly at night. What makes this phenomenon truly puzzling is its selectivity, affecting only about 2 to 11% of the population in areas where it is reported, while the majority of residents hear nothing unusual whatsoever. Those who experience the hum report that it seems to come from a specific direction, often described as emanating from beneath the ground or from the north, and that conventional methods of blocking sound, such as earplugs, provide little or no relief. The phenomenon has been documented in dozens of locations worldwide, with each outbreak affecting hundreds or sometimes thousands of people over periods ranging from months to decades. Extensive acoustic surveys using sensitive sound detection equipment have repeatedly failed to identify any external source for the reported humming, leading researchers to consider whether the phenomenon might be generated internally by certain individuals rather than by environmental sources. Some theories propose that the hum results from very low-frequency electromagnetic radiation that affects sensitive individuals through direct stimulation of the auditory nerve or other neural pathways. Others suggest it might be caused by microwave hearing effects, where pulsed electromagnetic energy is converted into sound perception within the head itself. The global nature of the hum phenomenon, combined with its consistent characteristics across different cultures and geographic locations, suggests either a worldwide environmental cause that remains undetected or a previously unknown aspect of human neurology that makes certain individuals susceptible to perceiving sounds that do not exist in the conventional acoustic environment. The mystery continues to frustrate both sufferers and researchers, representing one of the most widespread unexplained phenomena affecting human perception in the modern world. 48. Alien hand syndrome. Picture waking up to find that one of your hands has developed a mind of its own, reaching out to grab objects without your permission, unbuttoning your shirt while you try to button it, or even attempting to harm you while your conscious mind watches in horror. Alien hand syndrome is a rare neurological condition where patients lose conscious control over one hand, which begins to perform complex, purposeful actions that feel foreign and unwanted to the person experiencing them. The affected hand retains full motor function and can perform sophisticated tasks like writing, drawing, or manipulating objects. But these actions occur without conscious intention and often directly oppose what the patient is trying to accomplish with their other hand. In some cases, patients report that their alien hand seems to have its own personality and agenda, reaching out to touch strangers inappropriately, throwing away objects that the patient wants to keep, or even attacking the patient's own body. The syndrome most commonly occurs following damage to the corpus callosum, the bridge of neural tissue that connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain, or after injuries to the frontal or parietal cortex regions involved in motor planning and self-awareness. When the corpus callosum is severed, the two halves of the brain can no longer communicate effectively, potentially allowing one hemisphere to control hand movements without the awareness or consent of the dominant conscious hemisphere. Patients often develop elaborate coping strategies, such as sitting on the alien hand, keeping it occupied with specific tasks, or using their normal hand to physically restrain the rogue limb. Some individuals even begin to refer to their alien hand as a separate entity, giving it names and attributing malicious intentions to its actions. Treatment options are limited, though some patients benefit from techniques that keep the alien hand busy with purposeful activities or medications that affect brain chemistry. The syndrome raises profound questions about the nature of free will and personal agency, suggesting that our sense of unified conscious control over our actions may be largely an illusion created by normally functioning neural integration systems. 49. The Marfa Lights. In the vast desert expanse of southwest Texas, mysterious lights have been dancing across the horizon for over a century, creating one of America's most enduring and well-documented, unexplained phenomena. The Marfa lights appear as glowing orbs that hover, split, merge and move in patterns that seem to display intelligence and purpose, often described by witnesses as being about the size of basketballs and exhibiting colors ranging from white and yellow to red and blue. These enigmatic lights typically appear just after sunset in the area between the town of Marfa and the Chinati Mountains, following roughly the same geographic location night after night with remarkable consistency. What sets the Marfa lights apart from other unexplained aerial phenomena is the sheer number of credible witnesses who have observed them over the decades, including local residents, tourists, scientists, and even military personnel stationed at nearby installations. The lights have been photographed and filmed countless times, yet they continue to resist definitive explanation despite extensive scientific investigation. Observers report that the lights appear to respond to external stimuli, sometimes approaching when people shine flashlights in their direction or flash vehicle headlights, suggesting some form of interactive behavior that defies conventional explanations based on atmospheric or geological phenomena. Various theories have been proposed to account for the Marfa lights, including reflections of car headlights from distant highways, atmospheric inversions that bend light from remote sources, piezoelectric effects from crystalline rocks under geological stress, and plasma formations created by electromagnetic fields. However, none of these explanations adequately account for all observed characteristics of the lights, particularly their apparent intelligence, their consistency of location and behavior over many decades, and their existence in historical accounts that predate the widespread use of automobiles. The phenomenon has become such an integral part of local culture that the town of Marfa has built a special viewing area for tourists who come hoping to witness the lights, and the mystery continues to attract researchers from around the world seeking to understand this persistent anomaly that challenges our assumptions about natural phenomena. 50. Foreign accent syndrome. Imagine waking up from a stroke or head injury to discover that you are speaking in what sounds like a completely different accent, causing friends and family to stare at you in confusion as your familiar voice has been replaced by speech patterns that sound foreign and strange. Foreign accent syndrome is an extremely rare speech disorder where patients suddenly begin speaking their native language with what appears to be a foreign accent, despite having no history of living abroad or learning other languages. This bizarre condition typically develops following brain injuries, strokes, or neurological diseases that affect specific areas of the brain responsible for speech production and motor control. What makes foreign accent syndrome particularly puzzling is that the perceived accent often does not correspond to any specific language or region, but rather represents a collection of altered speech patterns that listeners interpret as foreign, based on changes in rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation. And the syndrome appears to result from subtle damage to neural pathways that control the precise timing and coordination of speech muscles, leading to alterations in vowel sounds, consonant articulation, and stress patterns that can make native speakers sound like non-native speakers to their own families and friends. Patients experiencing foreign accent syndrome often report feeling like strangers in their own bodies, as their altered speech patterns can fundamentally change how others perceive and interact with them, sometimes leading to social isolation and identity confusion. The condition has been documented in speakers of many different languages worldwide, with cases involving apparent German, French, Spanish, and even Scandinavian accents appearing in native English speakers following brain injuries. Brain imaging studies reveal that the syndrome often involves damage to areas of the left hemisphere that coordinate the complex motor sequences required for normal speech production, though the exact mechanisms by which these injuries produce accent-like changes remain poorly understood. Treatment typically involves speech therapy aimed at retraining normal articulation patterns, though complete recovery is rare and many patients must learn to adapt to their permanently altered speech patterns. Foreign accent syndrome highlights how dependent our sense of personal identity is on subtle aspects of speech and communication, and how neurological damage can fundamentally alter one of the most basic ways we express ourselves and connect with others. 51. The Kentucky Meat Shower. On March 3, 1876, residents of Bath County, Kentucky, witnessed one of the most bizarre and disturbing weather events in recorded history, when chunks of fresh meat began falling from a clear, blue sky, covering an area roughly 100 yards long and 50 yards wide with what appeared to be animal flesh. The meat shower occurred on the property of Alan Crouch, whose wife was outside making soap when the strange precipitation began causing her to flee indoors, as pieces of meat ranging in size from small flakes to strips several inches long rained down around her. Local residents who examined the fallen flesh described it as appearing fresh and having the texture and appearance of beef or mutton, though some pieces seemed to resemble different types of animal tissue entirely. Several brave individuals even tasted the mysterious meat, reporting that it had the flavor of venison or lamb, though this impromptu culinary investigation was probably not advisable from a safety standpoint. The incident attracted attention from scientists and journalists, leading to various attempts to explain how organic matter could fall from an apparently empty sky in such quantities and with such specificity. Early theories proposed that the meat might have been disgorged by a flock of vultures flying overhead, though this explanation struggled to account for the large quantity of material and the fact that no birds were visible in the area during the event. Some researchers proposed that the phenomenon might have been caused by a rare atmospheric event called a meteor shower of organic material, possibly from an exploded comet or other celestial body, though this theory lacked supporting evidence. Modern analysis of preserved samples using 19th century techniques suggested the material might have been lung tissue from a horse or similar large mammal, but definitive identification proved impossible with the limited scientific tools available at the time. The Kentucky meat shower remains one of the most documented cases of anomalous precipitation, representing a perfect example of how unusual natural events can challenge our understanding of atmospheric phenomena and leave enduring mysteries that resist conventional explanation. 52. Body integrity identity disorder. In the depths of human psychology lies one of the most disturbing and incomprehensible conditions known to mental health professionals. A disorder where mentally competent individuals experience an overwhelming desire to amputate perfectly healthy limbs or disable normal bodily functions because they feel these body parts do not belong to them. Body integrity identity disorder, formerly known as body dysmorphic disorder, involves a profound mismatch between an individual's mental map of their body and their actual physical form, leading to persistent feelings that certain limbs or abilities are foreign and should be removed. Sufferers report feeling uncomfortable, anxious, or incomplete when their unwanted body parts are present, and they often fantasize about or actively seek surgical amputation to achieve what they consider their true, proper physical state. What makes this condition particularly challenging for medical professionals is that patients are typically intelligent, rational individuals who understand the permanent consequences of amputation but still feel compelled to pursue surgical solutions to their psychological distress. Some individuals with the disorder go to extreme lengths to achieve their desired amputations, including deliberately injuring themselves, traveling to foreign countries where regulations are more lenient, or even attempting self-amputation using dangerous methods. The psychological mechanisms underlying body integrity identity disorder remain largely mysterious, though some researchers propose that it involves abnormal development or damage to brain regions responsible for creating mental maps of the body, similar to the neural problems that cause phantom limb syndrome in reverse. Brain imaging studies have suggested that individuals with the disorder may have altered connectivity between sensory processing areas and regions involved in body ownership and spatial awareness. The condition raises profound ethical questions about bodily autonomy, medical consent, and the obligations of healthcare providers when patients request procedures that seem harmful but might alleviate genuine psychological suffering. Treatment typically involves psychotherapy and medications aimed at managing the underlying psychological distress, though some patients continue to pursue amputation despite therapeutic intervention. The existence of body integrity identity disorder challenges our fundamental assumptions about the relationship between mind and body, suggesting that our sense of physical self is far more malleable and dependent on neurological processes than most people realize. 53. The Min Min Light. In the remote outback of Australia, Aboriginal legends speak of mysterious lights that chase travelers through the darkness, appearing as glowing orbs that follow vehicles for miles before vanishing without explanation, leaving witnesses questioning their sanity and the nature of reality itself. The Min Min lights, named after the Min Min Hotel where some of the earliest documented sightings occurred, represent one of Australia's most enduring paranormal phenomena, with reports dating back over a century and continuing to the present day. These enigmatic lights typically appear as white-yellow or greenish orbs that hover above the ground at varying heights, sometimes remaining stationary for extended periods before suddenly accelerating to incredible speeds or changing direction in ways that defy conventional physics. What makes the Min Min lights particularly unsettling is their apparent intelligence and interactive behavior, with many witnesses reporting that the lights seem to respond to human presence following cars along desert roads, approaching campsites, or even appearing to investigate aircraft flying overhead. The lights have been observed by hundreds of credible witnesses, including pilots, police officers, geologists, and long-term outback residents who are intimately familiar with natural phenomena and atmospheric conditions in the region. Unlike many unexplained phenomena that occur in remote areas with few witnesses, the Min Min lights have been documented extensively through photographs, video recordings, and detailed eyewitness accounts that show remarkable consistency across different time periods and geographic locations. Scientific investigations have proposed various explanations, ranging from atmospheric inversions that create mirages of distant light sources to piezoelectric effects from mineral deposits in the region is unique geological formations. Some researchers suggest that the lights might be caused by bioluminescent gases released from underground sources or plasma formations created by electromagnetic anomalies in the area. However, none of these conventional explanations adequately account for the light's apparent behavior patterns, their consistency over many decades, or their seeming ability to interact with observers in ways that suggest purposeful intelligence. The Min Min lights continue to be reported regularly by travelers crossing the Australian outback, maintaining their status as one of the continent's most persistent and well-documented unexplained phenomena that challenge our understanding of natural, atmospheric, and geological processes. 54. Hypertrichosis. Sometimes called werewolf syndrome, hypertrichosis is a rare condition that causes excessive hair growth all over the body, transforming affected individuals into living embodiments of humanity's most ancient fears about the thin line between civilization and wildness. This extraordinary genetic disorder results in thick hair covering virtually every inch of the body, including areas that are normally hairless, such as the face palms and soles of the feet, creating an appearance so striking that throughout history, people with hypertrichosis have been both feared and exploited as curiosities in circuses and traveling shows. The condition occurs in several different forms, with congenital hypertrichosis being present from birth due to genetic mutations that affect hair follicle development and regulation, while acquired hypertrichosis can develop later in life due to hormonal imbalances, medications, or underlying medical conditions. What makes hypertrichosis particularly fascinating from a scientific standpoint is that it may represent a throwback to an earlier stage of human evolution when our ancestors were covered in thick body hair like other primates, suggesting that the genetic instructions for full body hair coverage remain hidden in human DNA, waiting to be activated by rare mutations. The psychological impact of hypertrichosis can be profound, as affected individuals often face social isolation, discrimination, and psychological distress due to their dramatically altered appearance, though some have found ways to embrace their condition and even achieve fame through their unique characteristics. Historical figures with hypertrichosis include Petrus Gonsalves, a 16th century man whose condition inspired the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, and numerous individuals who became celebrated performers in 19th and 20th century circuses and sideshows. Modern treatment options include laser hair removal, electrolysis, and various depilatory methods, though these approaches require ongoing maintenance and may not be completely effective for severe cases of the condition. The study of hypertrichosis has contributed to our understanding of hair growth regulation and the genetic factors that control mammalian hair patterns, providing insights into evolutionary biology and the development of hair follicles. The condition serves as a reminder that human genetics retain the potential for dramatic variations that can fundamentally alter our appearance and challenge social norms about what it means to look human in a world where physical appearance heavily influences social acceptance and personal identity. 55. The Phoenix Lights. On the evening of March 13, 1997, thousands of people across Arizona witnessed one of the most dramatic and well-documented UFO events in modern history, as a massive triangular formation of lights moved silently across the sky over Phoenix and surrounding communities, creating a mystery that continues to generate debate and speculation over 2 decades later. The Phoenix Lights actually consisted of 2 separate phenomena occurring several hours apart, with the first involving a triangular formation of lights that traveled from the Nevada border to the Tucson area. Observed by numerous witnesses including commercial airline pilots, police officers, and government officials. Witnesses described seeing an enormous craft, estimated by some to be over a mile wide, that blocked out stars as it passed overhead and moved with complete silence at speeds that seemed inconsistent with conventional aircraft technology. The second event involved a series of stationary lights that appeared in formation over the Phoenix area and remained visible for extended periods, eventually disappearing one by one in a pattern that suggested controlled extinguishing rather than simple movement away from the observation area. The Arizona National Guard later claimed responsibility for the second set of lights, stating that they were flares dropped during training exercises at the Barry Goldwater Range, though this explanation did not account for witness reports of the lights remaining stationary for much longer than conventional flares should burn. The first phenomenon, involving the massive triangular formation, has never received an adequate official explanation, despite investigations by various government agencies and independent researchers. Video footage and photographs of both events were captured by multiple witnesses, providing visual documentation that continues to be analyzed and debated by UFO researchers and skeptics alike. What makes the Phoenix Lights particularly compelling is the sheer number of credible witnesses, including then Arizona Governor Fife Symington, who initially dismissed the reports but later admitted to seeing the phenomenon himself and described it as otherworldly in nature. The incident highlights the limitations of official explanations when dealing with unusual aerial phenomena, and demonstrates how even well-documented events can remain mysterious when conventional explanations fail to account for all observed evidence and witness testimony. 56. Jumping Frenchman of Maine. In the remote lumber camps of 19th-century Maine and nearby French-Canadian regions, medical observers documented one of the most bizarre neurological conditions ever recorded, a disorder that caused certain individuals to exhibit extreme and uncontrollable startle responses that could be triggered by sudden sounds, unexpected touches, or even simple verbal commands. The Jumping Frenchman of Maine, as this condition came to be known, affected primarily French-Canadian lumberjacks who would leap, shout, strike out, or throw objects when startled, often injuring themselves or others in their exaggerated responses to minor stimuli. What made this condition particularly strange was that affected individuals seemed to lose control over their actions entirely during startle episodes, sometimes following shouted commands involuntarily, even when those commands were inappropriate, embarrassing, or potentially dangerous. Or repeat words and phrases simply by giving them sudden verbal instructions during their heightened startled state, as if their normal inhibitions and conscious control had been temporarily suspended. The phenomenon appeared to be culturally specific, affecting primarily men of French-Canadian descent working in isolated forest communities, leading some researchers to speculate that it might have resulted from a combination of genetic predisposition, cultural factors, and the psychological stresses of frontier life. Medical professionals who studied the condition were puzzled by its apparent contagious nature, as outbreaks seemed to spread through lumber camps and affect multiple individuals in the same geographic areas and social groups. Some modern researchers have suggested that the Jumping Frenchman of Maine might have been an extreme form of hypereplexia, a rare genetic disorder that causes exaggerated startle responses combined with cultural and psychological factors that amplified the symptoms in specific populations. Others have proposed that the condition represented a form of culturally influenced hysteria or conversion disorder, where psychological stress manifested as dramatic physical symptoms that spread through social suggestion and imitation. The mystery of the Jumping Frenchman highlights how little we understand about the interaction between genetics, culture, and neurological function, particularly in isolated populations subjected to unique environmental and social stresses that may trigger unusual expressions of underlying neurological vulnerabilities. 57. The wow signal's return. Decades after the original wow signal captivated the scientific community with its tantalizing hint of extraterrestrial communication, researchers have detected what appear to be similar signals emanating from the same region of space, reigniting speculation about whether we are witnessing genuine attempts at interstellar communication from an alien civilization. These follow-up detections, while not identical to the original 72-second transmission from 1977, share certain characteristics that have excited SETI researchers and renewed interest in that particular area of the sky near the constellation Sagittarius. The new signals have been detected using more advanced radio telescopes and signal processing techniques than were available during the original discovery, allowing for more detailed analysis of their structure, polarization, and other properties that might provide clues about their origin and nature. What makes these subsequent detections particularly intriguing is their apparent periodicity, suggesting that whatever source is generating them may be following a predictable schedule or rotational pattern that could indicate artificial rather than natural origins. Some of the signals have exhibited frequency modulation and other characteristics that seem inconsistent with known astronomical phenomena, but consistent with what communications engineers might expect from deliberately constructed radio transmissions designed to attract attention across interstellar distances. However, the challenge of confirming these detections has been complicated by the fact that modern radio telescopes must compete with dramatically increased radio frequency interference from satellites, cell phone networks, and other human technology that did not exist when the original "wow" signal was detected in the relatively quiet radio environment of the 1970s. Independent verification of the signals has proven difficult, as they appear to be intermittent and may only be detectable using specific observational parameters and timing that researchers are still working to understand. The possibility that we are witnessing a sustained alien communication effort has profound implications for humanity, suggesting that our galaxy may harbor intelligent civilizations that are actively trying to make contact with other technological species like ourselves. Whether these signals represent genuine extraterrestrial intelligence, previously unknown natural phenomena, or sophisticated terrestrial interference remains one of the most important questions facing modern astronomy and the search for life beyond Earth. 58. Pica. Hidden within human psychology lies a compulsive disorder so bizarre and potentially dangerous that it challenges our most basic assumptions about appetite, nutrition, and self-preservation instincts. Pica is a condition characterized by persistent cravings and consumption of non-food substances such as dirt, starch, ice, paint chips, cornstarch, baking soda, or even more dangerous materials like glass, metal, or feces. Named after the Latin word for magpie, a bird known for eating almost anything, pica affects individuals across all age groups and intelligence levels, though it is most commonly observed in young children, people with developmental disabilities, and individuals suffering from certain mental health conditions. What makes pica particularly disturbing is that sufferers often consume these inappropriate substances in large quantities over extended periods, despite having access to normal food and understanding that their cravings are unusual and potentially harmful. The range of non-food items consumed by people with pica is staggering and includes everything from relatively benign substances like ice or starch to extremely dangerous materials like lead paint, which can cause severe poisoning, or sharp objects that can cause internal injuries or intestinal blockages. Some individuals develop highly specific cravings, such as for laundry detergent, cigarette ashes, or even human hair, while others seem to crave texture or sensory experiences rather than particular substances. The underlying mechanisms that drive pica remain poorly understood, though various theories have been proposed, including nutritional deficiencies, brain abnormalities affecting appetite regulation, stress responses, or obsessive-compulsive tendencies that become focused on inappropriate consumption behaviors. Treatment typically involves identifying and addressing any underlying nutritional deficiencies, behavioral therapy to redirect compulsive behaviors toward appropriate alternatives, and careful medical monitoring to prevent complications from continued consumption of dangerous substances. The condition highlights how fragile and mysterious our most basic survival instincts really are, demonstrating that even fundamental behaviors like eating can become distorted by neurological or psychological factors that override our natural self-preservation mechanisms. Pica serves as a reminder that human behavior, even at its most basic level, depends on complex brain processes that can malfunction in ways that put individuals at serious risk, despite their conscious understanding of the dangers involved. 59. The Mothman phenomenon. In the autumn of 1966, the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, became the epicenter of one of America's most enduring and terrifying cryptozoological mysteries, when residents began reporting encounters with a massive winged creature with glowing red eyes that seemed to herald disaster and tragedy wherever it appeared. The Mothman, as local media dubbed the entity, was described by witnesses as standing 6 to 7 feet tall, with enormous wings spanning 10 to 15 feet, capable of flying at incredible speeds and demonstrating an apparent ability to keep pace with automobiles traveling at highway speeds. What made these encounters particularly disturbing was the creature's apparent intelligence and its seeming interest in observing human activities, with witnesses reporting that the Mothman would perch on buildings, follow cars along remote roads, or simply stand motionless in fields while staring at people with its large, luminous red eyes that some described as hypnotically compelling. The sightings continued for over a year, with more than 100 people reporting encounters with the creature, including respected community members such as police officers, business owners, and government employees whose credibility made the reports difficult to dismiss as hoaxes or misidentifications. The Mothman phenomenon reached its tragic climax on December 15, 1967, when the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour traffic, killing 46 people and leading some to believe that the creature had been attempting to warn residents of the impending disaster. Many witnesses reported seeing the Mothman on or near the bridge in the days and weeks leading up to the collapse, fueling speculation that the entity might be some form of supernatural harbinger that appears before catastrophic events. Subsequent investigations have proposed various explanations for the Mothman sightings, including misidentifications of large birds such as sandhill cranes, barn owls, or even escaped exotic pets, though none of these alternatives adequately account for the creature's reported size, behavior, or the consistency of witness descriptions across multiple independent encounters. Some researchers have suggested that the Mothman might represent a previously unknown species of large flying animal, while others propose that the sightings were manifestations of mass hysteria or psychological projection triggered by local environmental stresses or contamination from nearby chemical plants. The Mothman phenomenon continues to attract researchers and tourists to Point Pleasant, where the creature has become a cultural icon despite the lack of definitive evidence for its existence, representing one of the most compelling examples of how unexplained encounters can capture public imagination and persist in collective memory long after the original events. 60. The silence. In scattered locations around the world, researchers have discovered zones where sound behaves in ways that defy our understanding of acoustic physics, creating areas of absolute silence that seem to absorb audio waves rather than allowing them to propagate normally through the environment. These mysterious quiet zones, found in places ranging from desert regions to underground caverns, exhibit properties that make them virtually soundproof, despite having no obvious physical barriers or sound-absorbing materials that would explain their acoustic anomalies. Visitors to these silent zones report experiencing a profound and unsettling absence of sound that goes beyond normal quiet environments, describing a sensation of acoustic emptiness so complete that it seems to press against their eardrums and create psychological discomfort after only brief exposure. What makes these zones particularly puzzling is that they appear to actively absorb sound waves rather than simply reflecting or scattering them with audio equipment, showing dramatic reductions in sound levels that cannot be explained by conventional acoustic principles or the physical properties of the surrounding materials. Some silent zones demonstrate selective acoustic properties, absorbing certain frequencies while allowing others to pass through normally, suggesting unknown mechanisms that interact with sound waves in ways that challenge fundamental principles of wave propagation and energy conservation. Scientific teams investigating these phenomena have proposed various theories, including unique geological formations that create natural sound traps, atmospheric conditions that bend sound waves away from specific areas, or even quantum mechanical effects that might influence the behavior of acoustic energy at the molecular level. The psychological effects of prolonged exposure to these silent zones can be profound, with some visitors reporting feelings of isolation, disorientation, and anxiety that seem disproportionate to the simple absence of background noise, suggesting that humans may be more dependent on ambient sound for psychological well-being than previously realized. The existence of natural silent zones raises questions about whether there are aspects of acoustic physics that remain undiscovered and highlights how much we still do not understand about the propagation of energy through different environments and materials. These mysterious quiet zones serve as a final reminder that even in our modern, thoroughly mapped world, there are still places where the familiar laws of physics seem to operate differently, creating pockets of reality where our most basic assumptions about sound space and sensory experience no longer apply.